2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. 2 times 8 is 16. 2 times 16 is 32. So this is all the material that you're going to need to know for your quiz on Thursday. Those of you that don't have your notebooks and pencils out, you probably want to get them out and get these down. Any questions on this so far? Does this make sense? Thursday's quiz is going to cover exponents, exponentients. So, see you tomorrow.
We're telling stories from the street level, from the common person. And there's not a more, common and forgotten, subsect of our society than, Native Americans and their reservations that they live on. And like I alluded to, it's like they're desolate, they're depressed, as as your typical white person who's gone on a church charity run to deliver mattresses. That's really when you get exposed to the desperation that these people live in. And I really appreciate the fact that the subtitle for this movie, the Love and Money on the Res, it does kind of give a romantic edge to this movie, and it's two leads and their arcing stories. It's deftly made, it's impeccably acted, the whole experience is rendered with authenticity and sincerity that even with its shortcomings, they are irrelevant, even though I wish they just didn't do what they did at the close there. It's in cauda venenum. The poison is at the end, because the whole bite through this movie is wonderful, and it needs to be seen. It's astonishing. What did you think?
Shitballs.
Welcome to Theater and Stream, a film podcast. I am Matt, and that is Chuck, and this is episode number 21. So before finishing our Tarsem Retrospective next week, we're taking a little bit of a detour into the more topical today with the new digital rental, War Pony. War Pony is the directorial debut of actress Riley Keough and producer Gina Gammell. Set in and around the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota, we're going to be getting into this intimate, underseen indie drama a little bit later in the show. But first, we've got a helping of the most relevant movie news of the week. We'll be talking about what else we've been watching in the Watchlist. And after that, we're going to be talking about the Mentionables at the very, very end of the show. Please like and subscribe if you like what you see. Please rate us on podcast services if you like what you hear. But that's the business end of the show. Chuck, take it away.
Well, I'm really glad we picked this one out, because it just takes me back to being in my history class in high school and having the TV wheeled in. And because I'm just going to put it this way as a tease to how the Pine Ridge Reservation, the condition it was in, what those people's lives looked like in the year 2006 in a PBS documentary. It's the exact same in 2023 as portrayed in War Pony. And that sets the stage for the Dickensian aspect, to quote The Wire, David Simon's little project. But before we get into that, we got to get into the biggest, at least potentially earth-shatteringly, week of news for the WGA, the stuff that actually matters, which is that it might be coming to an end, maybe. What is and isn't happening here? Because there's lots of, from what I understand, fake insider sources spouting nonsense. So what's real and what's not.
Yeah, so basically, last Friday, the AMPTP basically delivered their proposal to the WGA as kind of their counter proposal. And then this Tuesday, they met. They finally sort of met and talked about it. And essentially what happened was that there was some ground that was sort of made on the whole situation, but there's certain things that they really still don't agree on. Basically what happened was the guild kind of had a pretty major victory, the WGA, as far as they now the AMPTP budged as far as letting showrunners determine the size of their writing rooms. But they sort of put a little bit of a bit of a loophole on it where they said, like, okay, they can choose how many writers they want, but it's only in relation to the budget of the show. So it's like, if the show has a budget of like 50 million, you could have anywhere between, like, let's say 4 and 8 writers, but no more than that.
Otherwise, you're cutting into the production costs unreasonably.
Yeah. So they fall into little brackets based off the budget, but that was a bit of a win for the WGA, and then also the AMPTP sort of budged on stuff that they previously described as like non-starters for them that they would just never ever like agree on, and so that was a bit interesting, because one of those things was the the
making streaming
was it
hours.
the AI?
Yeah, okay. I thought AI was up in the air.
No, okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah, streaming hours. So that's interesting, especially considering our conversation from a couple weeks ago about how they, it's really not in their best interest to reveal that stuff because of, stock prices and stuff like that. But yeah, so what they want to do is they want to reveal how many hours certain shows are being watched, but that's really where it ends, because the WGA's proposal for that was, we want to base residuals off that number, but then the AMPTP came back with, okay, we'll reveal those numbers, those hours watched, but we're not going to tie them to residuals in any way. So it's kind of like, okay, what's the point then? Why even reveal them in the first place then? So I don't know, that was a bit weird to me.
Possibly, I thought it could be that it's like, well, then you can rationalize ordering another season. It's being well seen.
Oh, sure.
So yeah. It's like, hey, I can make the case for more, or I can make the case that you should let me make another streaming movie with you. So in that way, I feel like it's a good feedback mechanism for people to get more work. But yeah, it's not going to turn into the golden age of 90s syndication where Larry David can become a billionaire in 1999. It's just not going to happen anymore. Like, it's just not going to work that way anymore. The advertising is just not there. The money's not there. So, and of course, what money is there is being gobbled up in every other feasible way possible. So yeah, there's some concessions being made. Any other like small victories, or did things kind of go? Did it cut both ways a little, or like where are things at exactly?
Yeah, so basically, as you had said, they didn't really. I don't think they really budged on AI, and they didn't budge on what was the other thing? There was something else too that they didn't budge on. But basically, the feeling after the meeting, from sort of inside sources, was that there is no quick end in sight. That's the way that they termed it. And now yesterday, which would be Friday, as we're talking about this, Friday the 18th, all of the studio heads got together because they're starting to take sort of a personal interest in ending this strike, because they're getting a lot of flack right now as far as, business challenges. They're facing things like a very bleak fall schedule going into the fall TV season. They're also feeling pressure from investors at this point, and then also their salaries are coming under fire, which is like, I think was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, because they're like, oh no, my $50 million salary. And so Yeah, they met yesterday. We don't know the results of that meeting, and I don't think we are gonna become privy to that. But yeah, it was like, the big shots. It was like the meeting of the minds during like World War II when all the big leaders got together. It was like, Sarandon, Zaslav, Langley, and Bergman, which are, Disney, Netflix, WB, and Universal.
Wow.
So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, the other sort of, I guess, to cap off this story, the other thing that sort of happened this week was, in the lead up to all this stuff, there was a lot of like supposed like fake leaks that were coming out, where a bunch of people got on Twitter and were like, hey, the strike's ending, this is they're meeting on Tuesday and everything's gonna be a-okay. And then the WGA had to come out and be like, no, like, this is not the case. And so yeah, it's interesting that this happened. It's almost like there are sort of like I don't know, like fake insiders, or like, almost like spies, because both sides have agreed to a media blackout, and it's very like covert ops sort of.
And yet there are leaks. Yeah, it's all just misinfo, disinfo. It's a Hollywood information operation, the hallmarks of a Hollywood information operation. So there is some FUD swirling around. There's some propaganda. These guys are really sensitive about their $250 million annual paydays. That's what Zaslav gets paid. That's what's really got people pissed off. But is how much money that man makes. But there's a kind of an offshoot to the whole strike conversation, because it's what don't they want to let go of? They don't want to let go of AI yet, the TPP. That is still the future, where it's like, okay, fuck this human writer's room. We're just gonna take like algorithmic, like literary blueprints of their writing style and their sensibilities via interviews, and then they will just create a writer's room AI where they take your talents and they put it into a black box, and then they spit out an entire season of Yellow Jackets for you to enjoy. That's the future. And no one sees it more acutely than Charlie Kaufman, who is particularly black-pilled this week, because he was at the Sarajevo Film Festival, and Jesus Christ, this man did not hold back. Did you check out his statements? It was wild, the things he had to say. Like, beyond hot takes. These were like molten.
Oh yeah, he was pissing off everyone. I mean, he was offending filmmakers, he was offending writers, he was offending the audiences that watch these movies. He was out to get everyone, and he had a comment about every single, you could take any person in the world and they could fall into a bucket of a person that Charlie Kaufman was talking about this week. So yeah, what did he have to say?
Oh, good God. Well, basically just that because the studios have just been delivering slop for so long, the appetite and the diet of the audience is so corrupted that they're irredeemable. That's basically the whole process, the whole ecosystem of cinema is so polluted from his point of view that it's no longer art. It can never be art anymore. It's all garbage. And everyone who makes it should feel really, really bad about themselves. The people who like it should feel doubly even worse about themselves. And yeah, he's such an eccentric, esoteric weirdo. That's his whole vibe. I couldn't even begin to tell you what the fuck his last movie was about. I can't explain that one.
What was that? Anomalisa? Was that his last one, or
was
it? Oh no, I'm thinking of Ending Things.
I'm thinking of Ending Things. Sorry, really bizarre movie, But I think he's kind of wrong because is Beau is Afraid not art? Because that's essentially what he's arguing here. Beau is Afraid was created as a product by A24, a very specific product. So is its integrity undermined? He's right about some things. I understand his concerns, but the man is up his own ass.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, the thing that he is forgetting about is the business side of movie making, and whether or not, I mean, all art, no matter what, there's an artistic side to it, a artistically fulfilling side, and then there's also the business side. And he's kind of forgetting about that idea that, I'm sure the lighting rigger that goes and works on a Marvel movie, he doesn't go to work every day and be like, I am artistically fulfilled by rigging all this lighting on this Marvel movie.
Yeah.
He goes to work every day to make a paycheck to feed himself or his family. And I don't know, I think Charlie Kaufman's kind of forgetting about that aspect of it. I mean, if you want to be a starving artist that makes, $500,000 indie dramas that are very, seen by very few people, and you want to do that because you think it keeps your integrity intact somehow, go do that. But most people want to go have a steady job working on a Marvel movie or being the gaffer on the latest, WB blockbuster. He really is up his own ass here, and it's very easy for him to say these things when he's in the position he is now, where he makes these weird little movies and he gets, I went and looked up Charlie Kaufman's net worth before the podcast today, and he's the figures vary, but it's anywhere from 10 to 13 million dollars is what the guy's worth. So it's like, dude, you are a millionaire over and over again by making your really weirdo, eccentric movies once every like 4 years. So it's like, it's incredibly easy for you to say stuff like this.
Yeah, it's like he can put whatever he wants out there. He can spend as much time as he wants making it. It's the creative process, while probably laborious and involved, it's a layup compared to like what it takes for the technical and the craftsman and the administrative side of the industry, the blue and gray collars that keep the whole system working. And honestly, this is something I've kind of been holding back on, but because of current events, it's kind of made more acute to me. Yeah, it's all about the writers. Yeah, it's all about the actors and all that, but how come, what are the people who do all of the little things gonna get out of this? Because what is keeping like food on their tables? The like you say, the gaffers, the best boys, the grips, the people who just run around and just are gophers and make sure that Johnny Depp gets out of his trailer and and is in front of the camera when they need him to be. Like that is an essential person to the process. And what are they doing right now? They're twiddling their thumbs too, just praying that eventually a deal will be made and they can go back to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And people are kind of forgetting about those people. And if he had sort of aimed these comments specifically at people like writers or people like directors, I think maybe he has a little bit more of a case, because I guess if you do go right on the latest Marvel movie, you are, sort of trading your creativity for, a bit steadier of a paycheck, or a bit better of a paycheck, I suppose. So, he is right in some ways, but I don't know if you saw this, but did you see how the article you posted, what was it from? Was it a Variety article?
It was a Variety article.
Yeah. Did you happen to catch the last paragraph of this?
Honestly,
article?
I think I maybe didn't make it that far. What did they say?
It's funny because Charlie Kaufman said all of this stuff, and then at the very, very end of the article, it said, Charlie Kaufman was at the Sarajevo Film Festival to promote his latest short film that was shot on a Samsung cell phone and was commissioned by Samsung. And so, I don't know, I thought that was a little bit of a jab from the writer, because it's like, yeah, he's saying all this stuff, but then, dude, you are there promoting a short film that you literally made in, cooperation with Samsung on one of their fucking smartphones. So it's like, okay, whatever, dude.
Yeah, Jesus. Yeah, nail him to the wall, Matt. Fuck. But time to move on to the watch list, because there are things that are coming out that we are going to be able to see. And I don't know if I'm quite vibing with Winning Time Season 2 quite yet. There's just not enough Jerry Buss. He's just too melancholy and, dopey. And there's just not enough of what that first season had as far as good qualities and like an energy until the second episode here. That's I really love how like willing they are to just hit the accelerator and just advance through the timeline, because that was my big worry. I was like, are we just gonna get a laborious slog through every season of the Showtime Lakers era, or are they just gonna give us the goods? And that's what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really I enjoyed the second episode especially. I mean, there's 2 out right now, and I when I was watching it, I was watching the opening credits, and then it said directed by Trey Edward Schultz, and I sort of like sat up a little taller in my chair because I was like, okay, this is gonna be good, and it was. There was something more artistically interesting about this second episode, because the one thing that really annoys me about this show is the constant just like God, I don't know what you'd even call it, like the camera work and the switching between styles and all of the weird like digital like the fake artifacting that they put on the screen, or like the fake like lines of static to try and make the show look like it was actually filmed in the 70s and stuff. And I don't know, it's just like it gets really annoying after a while, because it's like constantly switching between like widescreen and 4:3, and then there was that scene in the first episode towards the very end of the episode where like everything got really like blown out and bright when Magic was just kind of hanging out on the basketball court by himself, and the lights got really like super bright and washed out, and it's like, what are we doing? And I don't know, I get really annoyed by that type of stuff, and it's a lot of this show seems to be retreading the ground of season 1, where it's like they made all this progress with the team, where it's like, okay, we're vibing finally, and everybody's getting along and everybody's cool with each other, and then they just hit like the reset button on this season, where it's like, oh no, we all hate each other again, and Magic is a dickhead again, and Kareem is sort of a domineering captain figure, and they sort of hit the reset button, and they threw away a lot of that character progression that was done at the end of season 1.
It's pretty unfortunate, because but I think the only thing that saves it is that for once they are hewing somewhat to what actually happened, because the one thing that I laud the show for, at least from the first season to the second one, is the choice of like how they do their opening scenes to set the season up. The first season, they set it up with Magic finding out that he had HIV. Second season, it's them right after a key victory in their first finals battle against against the Celtics, and then they take us all the way back, to like how did we even get to that point? So the sports fan in me somewhat respects it, but it is unsatisfying, because it is just a little arbitrary. Like, it probably didn't happen this dramatically. It was probably more subtle. I know the T-shirt story definitely happened. I've heard Magic Johnson tell that story, where he's like, no, motherfucker, get that shit away. I don't want to see anyone wearing it. And then he gets out there and everyone is wearing it, and he's just like, still got to put on the smile. So it is a little like, small and petty, unfortunately, like as far as that goes. But I love the clashes that are going on between the coaching and the executives. Yes. That stuff is great. And the power struggle between Riley and Westhead, I'm really enjoying that stuff, and the acting we're getting from those dudes. Mm-hmm. But yeah,
all the stuff with the them deciding whether or not to take that guy from the Denver Nuggets, it's all really good, and that's kind of the downside to the show, is that there is stuff that is incredibly well done, and then there's stuff that I'm just like, oh god, like this is like all the stuff with like the tennis team and Jerry Buss's daughter and son. I'm just like, no, get this shit out of here.
I got a point of order here. I got into a stupid little Reddit fight with some guy on the NBA forums, because there was this meme going around, because there's no NBA, so they're talking about the show. and people were just making the point like, God, all this genie bus girl boss bullshit is lame as fuck. And people were like, why are they doing that? Like, it's ruining the vibe totally. Like, why is she so important to the story? And then I pipe in, I'm like, well, it's probably because behind the scenes she had a lot to do with this show actually happening. And probably like she might not have been able to co-sign specifically, because she doesn't want to piss off the old heads that are getting denigrated and, and made to look bad and like as assholes. Because, yeah, she is such a Mary Sue. And I just said that, and then I got called sexist and downvoted into oblivion. But I just I was just like, hey, I'm right. It's like that's what's happening here. She is the lamest part of this show. She's dead air. Gabby Hoffman, way more interesting, and she is utterly irrelevant. She has nowhere to go in this show now. She's window dressing, and that's lame. Because she's a lot. I like her character a lot more than Jeannie. Because Jeannie's just, I have all these great ideas, and all the boys still keep me down. It's give me something more.
Even like, I mean, not to just keep it confined to her, to the daughter, but the son stuff is stupid too. Like all his, like him dating the tennis star is just like, okay, I don't care about this at all. Like this is all the bus family stuff could go, in my opinion. And I mean, I mean, I like Jerry Buss as a character. I like John C. Reilly's performance, but even his, I don't know where they're going with him this season, but even his like sort of rekindled old flame with that woman. That's what I mean. I'm just kind of like, no, like get him involved with the basketball team again. Like I don't want him to be, he has like, it seems like he has nothing to do with any of the basketball storyline this season. He's just doing all this other stuff, and it's like get him back in with the team.
And I think that's what we're gonna see going forward, because like I think unfortunately, just because I know what's coming in the story, that unfortunately we're gonna have to get used to people being pissed off about magic. But if we're gonna being way too successful and way too cozy with the ownership, but that's kind of gonna become what I think is gonna define this season. It's gonna be how Magic and Bus found a way to overcome everyone else trying to drag them down. And but what I need is more Michael Chiklis, and I need my Larry Bird. Yeah. I need to see the boogeyman in the show a little bit more, because like that's really what I just want the magic. I want the sparks. But it's we gotta be tepid. But like the affectations, all those like artifacting and like all that, the faux 70s, like aspect ratios, that stuff just needs to go. It was a dumb thing that Adam McKay got way too excited about, and now because that's the visual tone of the show, they're stuck with it, and I don't think they can ever go away. On the watch list, we have another entry from Max, a documentary series called Telemarketers. Where did this come from, and what do we make of it?
Yeah, so this is a 3-episode documentary miniseries, and the interesting thing about this show is like 90% made up of footage from like the mid-2000s, and that's just been like sitting somewhere like in a guy's closet. And this show, the only reason I think it got made is because it has some pretty heavy hitter producers behind it, like Safdie Brothers, Danny McBride. And essentially what this is it's about a telemarketing company called Civic Development Group that was in New Jersey in the 2000s, and they would cold call people on behalf of like the New Jersey Fraternal Police Organization, and try and solicit donations. And what they would do is they would pocket whatever donations they got. They would pocket 90% of it, and then only actually give 10% of it to like the fraternal police. And this documentary is sort of, I mean, in episode 1, it's just kind of this interesting like slice of life, like this is what this place was like, this is what working for this company was like, which is basically they, as long as you did your numbers, as long as you got your donations, you could do anything you wanted at this place, whether that be, nodding off on heroin at your desk or getting drunk or having sex in the bathroom. They didn't give a shit as long as you were, hitting your numbers. And I think this is going to evolve into something more, because the sort of hint that you get at the end of episode 1 is that there's something more sinister going on with this company under the surface, and I really enjoy this. I mean, I really like it. It may be very nostalgic for like the 2000s in a way, and it's just an interesting artifact from that time, because essentially this is just a bunch of footage from this dirtbag like telemarketing guy, and then his like heroin addict best friend, who was basically like, let's make a documentary because there's something going on here. And they just filmed all this footage that never got turned into anything until now. And so, yeah, I really like this.
Yeah, it's one of those amazing things that like you can't believe you have it. Just how open everybody was. But like I can guarantee you my family got calls from these fucking people. Not that they ever gave them money, but like, because we hated telemarketers with a passion, but those were the kind of people that were doing it. And it's just, it's gratifying to know that they were just as decrepit as I always assumed they were. But at the same time, there is a lot of charm here. There's these characters, these people are amazing. They deserve to be filmed. Like, and the fact that this was on YouTube back in the day is infuriating, because this was in front of us the whole time. If you think about it.
Nice.
Because they mentioned that like it only had 40 views, but it was still on YouTube.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, I didn't realize that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's this obscure thing, but like I just really want to see where this is going, because like you alluded to, there's something under the surface beyond just the hijinks and the bad business practices of this company. Because I want to know, like, what's the plan here? Like, what's the gimmick gonna evolve to be? Because is this gonna wind up being like another, like a Q enter the jump in the rabbit hole or whatever that one was called? Because that one went places, and I want to see if this is gonna go places as well.
Yeah, same. I'm really excited to see where it's going, and other documentary filmmakers take note, because this is only 3 episodes. Yeah. And I have a feeling that, it's going to warrant those 3 episodes, but no more than that. And it's like, get your, HBO especially, it's like, get your fucking like 7-episode documentary series out of here. Like I want 3 tight, fast moving episodes. And I hope, that's what this is going to give us.
Golly, yeah, because that is the trend. It's just these bloated... It's because I'm Making a Murderer. They all just thought they needed to make these mammoth productions. But yeah, another thing I appreciate, the talking heads are the actual people involved in the story. There's not like these, like, I'm a talking head journalist from Sabeteurs, blah, blah, blah. No, it was the people who were there telling the story, in the future and in the past. And God bless this guy for doing what he did. Because we 2006, like the all the clothes they wear, the way the cans looked like on like their sodas and whatnot. It just very much was of a time. Mm-hmm. I was also able to check out finally Asteroid City. I watched this movie a couple times, since Luca was born, and I had all that free time during paternity leave. Because I held off because I was worried that this really wasn't going to be worth my time. I kind of feel like it is worth our time, and people just need to. I don't know. I understand the resistance because it is such a formal and absurdist experience, and it's really hard to make sense of what certain aspects are supposed to be saying or doing. But it is enriched with exposure and and understanding, because your first watch of this movie is going to leave you like bewildered. You're not going to have a very much of a sense of like why is it told this way, because he's just a goofy guy, this dude. Like starting with I don't know how far back it goes. Maybe it's his whole career. All of his movies are kind of like this, where he's really taking he's like, oh, I'm gonna make a movie about that's going to be very play-like, or I'm going to make a movie that's going to be a visual representation of really eloquent essays. Like that kind of shtick. Like whatever his source of inspiration is, it is like so integral to the movie that you're getting that you really just need to accept the fact that that's what you're getting, and not expect more than what the movie's going to be doing. I don't know. This was a hard movie to understand. What was the point of this movie to you, Matt?
Well, when I had talked about it, I don't know, a couple months back now, I had sort of hinted at something else going on with this movie, something more interesting than like a typical Wes Anderson movie. And I think that comes in with all the stuff involving the play, because none of that stuff, I believe, is in the trailer at all. And it's all just, you don't even get a hint at it. And there is something he's saying here, because I have only seen the movie once, and so I'm trying to sort of gather my thoughts from that. And there's something he's trying to say about the way that, because this play is being put on, and we're led to believe that everything happening in Asteroid City is the play, and then everything happening in New York behind the scenes are all the actors, sort of trying to figure out the process, and then there's also Edward Norton as the writer, and sort of how he envisions things. And Wes Anderson is saying something interesting about how, when somebody puts their piece of art out there, they have an intention as to how that art should be seen and how it should be performed and how it should be looked at. But then somebody else interprets it as something else entirely. And that's what the play is. And then, there's something being said there about how we choose to interpret art and how it's different than the original creator intended for it to be interpreted. And so, yeah, I really like all that stuff as far as this movie is concerned.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, because it's a dense little movie, and like you need subtitles as well. It's hard to catch what people are saying sometimes, but it just has such a awesome aesthetic. Barbie stole everything from Asteroid City. You know what I mean? Like in terms of the dioramas and like the sets, making this movie, like all Wes Anderson movies, just must have been a whole lot of fun. And yeah, I think people need to give this a reappraisal. There's more to this than meets the eye.
Yeah.
And we have some quick hits from you, because you finished up some watches. You watched some things to completion. And what was your takeaway from Hijack?
Yeah, Hijack. I finished the full season. And yeah, I just wanted to touch on this real quickly again, that, this show's kind of a crowd pleaser, and I think it functions the best when it's sort of seen as such, where, it's a little generic, it's a little, slight, I guess is what I call it, but it does, the tension really well, it does the thriller really well. And I really enjoyed this, all the way through. It's going back to talking about shows sort of warranting their length. This show is 7 episodes, like 7 40-minute episodes. So as far as like a drama thriller type show goes, that's pretty short, and it really moves at a brisk pace. And it was really, really great, I thought, all the way through. And there's this point I just want to call out in episode 5 or 6 where Idris Elba, he's this sort of negotiator, and that's what he's trying to do the entire show. He's trying to negotiate everything, and he's trying to get everybody to keep a cool head. But then somewhere around episode 5 or 6, he basically decides to throw that all out the window. And the way that he does that is he takes a water bottle on the plane, and you see him take a Sharpie out, and he circles something on the label of the water bottle. And then he starts passing it back to all the other passengers on the plane, and they sort of pass this water bottle around to sort of get a message out. And you actually see it there in the trailer a little bit, and what it says, it gets to everybody, and then everybody looks at it, and then everybody starts sort of tensing up in their seats, and then you finally see what it says. and he circled like the slogan on the water bottle that says, "It's time to shake things up." And then that's when, that's when everybody goes like all United 93 and just fucking like just bodies the terrorists, and it's amazing. It's incredible.
Wow.
And yeah, I really enjoyed it all the way through. And it gets a little lame towards the end, or a little contrived, where they set up this sort of like very video gamey like final boss battle between like the main terrorist and Idris Elba, and it's just like, okay, this is kind of lame. But otherwise, yeah, very, very good. And I don't know if this is going to get a second season. They leave some threads hanging, oddly enough. And so it could function as a miniseries. It could get a second season. I guess I'm not really sure. But
it'll depend on how much it moves the needle for Apple, I
probably.
suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, the last thing I wanted to talk about is Solar Opposites Season 4. And I wanted to talk about this sort of with respect to the fact that, Justin Roiland got replaced as Corvo by Dan Stevens. And, I just wanted to mention that really quick, that this is the same old show. If you like Solar Opposites in the past, you're going to like this season probably. I think there is something to be said about, when Justin Roiland was going through all of those allegations and stuff, that one of the things that came out was that he's rarely involved with his shows anymore, and he basically just shows up and does the voices and then goes home. And I think that was probably the case, because as far as the writing is concerned with the show, it's the same.
Yeah.
It's the exact same show. They haven't missed a beat, but there is something missing by not having his voice as Corvo in the show, because Dan Stevens does a good job. I like Dan Stevens as an actor, but you get the sense that he doesn't really have any agency over the way that Corvo is portrayed, and he basically kind of just showed up to read a bunch of lines, and then, like that was it. He showed up as an actor, and that's all he was an actor. He showed up to be a voice actor. And so the Justin Roiland, the Corvo as Justin Roiland, there is something lost there, because you could tell that as a co-creator on the show, he had some sort of agency as to how the character was portrayed, and he had a sense of where he wanted the character to go. And Dan Stevens doesn't have that. Dan Stevens is showing up to do a performance, and that's it. And so there is something lost here.
Yeah.
And
it's more mercenary and less, like what we, if the brand that was Justin Roiland. But it's hard to say. Is that man ever going to have his name on another project ever again?
I don't know, because I don't know. It's tough to say, because, they did, a lot of that stuff involving, was it his girlfriend?
Or
that
like,
was it was his
yeah, or like some kind of a girlfriend, or not a wife, but it was a domestic situation. Yeah.
Yeah, like a lot of that stuff got proven to be either, patently false, or at least like really, really overblown. But then, in some ways, some of the stuff that he was involved with wasn't, fake, or it wasn't a sort of fabrication, like all of his weird text messages to minors. And so I don't know, it's kind of a case of he was sort of half vindicated, but then he wasn't with certain stuff. So I don't know. I don't know if I don't think so. I think he's probably done, honestly, and it's a bit of a shame, because I don't know if like the punishment befits the crime exactly after, he's been vindicated of all the stuff involving his girlfriend. And I don't know, he could come back. He could pull a like a Roman Polanski or something like that. I have no idea.
Yeah, just give the man a Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Something like that. Moving on to the featured review this week. We are talking about War Pony. And I used the word Dickensian at the beginning of the show for a reason, because of a fan of The Wire, that was a very obvious wink from that show's creator that that's what we're doing here. We're telling stories from the street level, from the common person. And there's not a more common and forgotten subsect of our society than Native Americans and their reservations that they live on. And like I alluded to, it's like they're desolate, they're depressed, and like as like as your typical white person who's gone on a church like charity run to like deliver mattresses, like that's really when you get exposed to the desperation that these people live in. And I really appreciate the fact that like the subtitle for this movie, the Love and Money on the Res, it does kind of give a romantic edge to this movie, and it's, you know, two leads and their arcing stories, you know, that really only intersect until it's, it's done for cloying reasons, because like the end of this movie really undermines the absolute rapturous success that is like 99% of its runtime. This movie is incredible. It has so much about it that is just obviously, you know, sincere and easy to be genuine, because it's all these non-professional actors. It's all these real people who live, you know, on the Pine Ridge Reservation. Like they're wearing their clothes, they're in their homes, they're doing what they probably typically do every night or every day, you know. And it just, like, I haven't seen a movie made this recent feel this real, and like in a way that didn't just make me think that it was all fake. You know, like this is just an actor, you know, this is just some like, you know, person with who's never tasted struggle portraying it. Like these were people just living their lives on the camera, and there's a kind of elegance that goes into making that happen. It's deftly made, it's impeccably acted, the whole experience is rendered with authenticity and sincerity that even with its shortcomings, they are irrelevant, even though I wish they just didn't do what they did at the close there. It's in Cauda Venenum. The poison is at the end, because the whole bite through this movie is wonderful, and it needs to be seen. It's astonishing. What did you think, Matt?
Yeah, I'm you know, inclined to agree. This is, you know, it really shows the Res is sort of a different world, and it shows this is sort of a slice of life of the absurd reality of living on the reservation, where sort of it's almost as if time has, you know, stood still there, or time is like 20 years behind. Like everything is older, you know, time moves slower there. And one of the things that I noticed about the film was that everybody, the cell phones everyone is using, everybody has they have iPhone 5s, and, you know, they're using like the iPhones from, you know, like what like 8 years ago instead of the latest ones. And it's, yeah, time stands still. And it's also like the setting, the modern day Res is such like a disparate place where, you know, horses share the streets with junker cars, and, you know, like this blown out bassy rap music just like overtakes the sounds of nature that, you know, like should be there. And you know, like the tribal elders sort of chant and sing while all the younger generations are just like ignoring them and like on their phones or whatever. And yeah, it's just a disparate place where, you know, it's a place of conflicting ideals. And I really enjoyed it. And I love like how this thing, you know, it is an indie drama, but there are points in this film where it really like almost turns into like a thriller. And I was like, oh my God, like this is so tense. Like what's happening now? Like what, and we'll get to those scenes, but, you know, it's just like, what is going to happen? This is really tense. And this is really like anxiety inducing what's happening. And it really gets that stuff right. And yeah, really enjoyed it.
Because we have to be clear, the narrative here is rough. Because because on one hand, one of your main stories is about just a little boy, you know, descending into alcoholism, meth, and, you know, delinquency, because everything around him, well, there's no village to support him. You know, he doesn't have a loving home. You know, his friends' parents know he's trouble and don't want him around. So what happens to a kid like that? You know, like what are they going to do to him? You know, when you think about it. And those scenes were the hardest. Like watching kids that young act like they're smoking meth and just taking, you know, rips on, you know, vodka and whiskey. You know that that's actually happening, you know, somewhere, you know, in a community like that. and it's a hard thing to watch. So be ready for that, people. Like, that's the kind of stuff you're gonna have to deal with. But otherwise, there is just kind of like a Trailer Park Boys kind of like, all right, what's the scheme today, fellas? What are we doing? You know, like you kind of, with Bill's storyline, you get that vibe. But yeah, like, what did you think of the two leads and the actors who, you know, like, who portrayed them?
Yeah, they were great. I mean, if people don't know, this film pretty much exclusively uses non-actors and people who actually like live on the reservation. And the only I was sort of researching it before our show, and the only person who's a working actor in this entire movie is the woman who played the white guy's girlfriend or wife or whoever she was. She's like the only working actor. Everybody else is non-actor from the community, even the white guy. And it's interesting because, you know, I think it's pretty much entirely successful. I think they all are incredibly natural. I think they all are like, you know, it's surprising how like non-stilted a lot of it is, and how good of acting, you know, they turn in a lot of the people. And the two leads were both really, really great. And I like, you know, especially what's his name, Jojo Baptiste Whiting, I think is his name, the older guy. He you know, if he really wanted to, I think he has like a future in acting. And he
like, Euphoria needs to call him. Like, you know, like they have a gape, like, because of unfortunate events, they have a gaping hole in their cast, and this young man he's ready to fill it.
Yeah, he was great. And I just like all the stuff that he's involved. Yeah, his like schemes, his like wanting to breed, being obsessed with breeding poodles, and like looking at like pictures on his phone of poodles all the time. And like, yeah, that was all really, really great. And then, you know, as you said, this movie starts pretty like, you know, even though the circumstances are dire, this movie starts pretty like in a lighthearted way, where it's just kind of like these harebrained schemes, and like these, you know, the younger actor, the younger main actor, he, you know, he's slinging meth, and he's like
cutting it with salts and stuff like that.
Yeah, and he's you know, he sells it to that guy with the donkey, and he's like, "Pleasure doing business with you and your donkey." And it's very lighthearted at the beginning, but even when things do start getting pretty dire and pretty depressing, you know, these two lead actors really hold up. They really hold their own. They can do the dramatic stuff too. And you know, especially with the older guy, like there's that scene where, you know, not to jump ahead too much, but there's that scene where he's, you know, walking back to his car with the dead poodle.
Yeah.
And he really does a lot in that scene, where he's with, you know, as far as with the body language and the facial acting, and, you know, the crying, and he really, really does a lot there. And I was very surprised. Yeah, I really, really enjoyed both performances.
Because the Native American affect is very flat, but what was amazing about this movie was how much like actual subtlety and depth that was actually there, you know, from like in all of these actors. Even the lady who takes Matho in, who's like secretly running like a meth operation out of her house, like when she's having her confrontation with him, like that made me very uncomfortable and really fucking sad, because it's like, yeah, like because that's the lady that does them a solid and covers the rest of their tab at the C-store at the beginning of the movie, you know. You know, and you know, like that's how she's able to do that, because she picks up all the strays and all the urchins, and you know, and she uses like, she's like a little Fagin, you know, like, and that's where the neo-Dickensian like descriptor comes in, because it leans pretty heavily into that slice of life, you know, sort of like, you know, moral fable kind of thing. Because I don't know, it just reminded me a lot also of an Italian movie that I've talked about before called Tree of Wooden Clogs, which is just like a very like realist sort of, you know, like movie about, you know, like very simple people, you know, and like, you know, people who, you know, are like in that case, it's people who live on like they're indentured farm workers on like a Italian baron's land. And when you look at the dynamic between Bill and the white turkey farmer. That's kind of where like that's another aspect of it. It's because it's a class commentary all at the same time. Because there are these little like little like petite tyrants who live in these tiny towns, and they just have all the money and they got like all the fun, and then they're the ones that you'll know that they can get whatever they want if they wave enough money in someone's faces. This just reminded me of where I come from, where to a great degree, because like we're only 2 counties away from Standing Rock, and to a lot of people it is just a place to go to Prairie Nights. This is the casino. That's all that it is to them. It's where they can see really washed up rock bands, like when they're on their last legs tour. But then this is what's happening beyond the lights. This is what's like being put in darkness, for a lot of people. And like you with all the activity that happened in that neck of the woods, like in like 5 or 6 years ago, you just hope that there would have been like more done to uplift those communities and not just scratch your activist itch, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. That's my soapbox. But back to the movie.
Well, I think that one of the things this movie really gets right is, and I put in our doc about how it gets the protagonist right in the fact that, when you have a film that features either unlikable or more neutral protagonists,
yeah,
they're usually like pieces of shits with hearts of gold, where it's like, yeah, this person kind of sucks, but for some reason they have this like heart of gold where they're at the end of the day they just want to do what's good, and they somehow come out on top. But I never really got the sense that someone like Bill was out for anybody but himself. He always did stuff, he always did things, his responsibilities, very begrudgingly, like taking care of his kids, or trying to have some sort of relationship with his baby mama that isn't anything but sexual. And he did everything very like just like begrudging of his responsibilities. And but in some way he's still sort of likable in a way, and I found that very odd. I still somehow was endeared to him. And the film itself rarely took sides with that type of thing. It's just like, here it is, here it is, this is who this guy is. And it's not really telling the audience how to feel. And the same can be said about the younger kid too, because he's I hesitate to say he's as big of a piece of crap, but he's sort of like a piece of shit in training, basically.
Yeah, it's like it's Pokemon evolutions.
Yeah,
because it's Matho, and then it's Bill, and then it's Matho's dad at the end of it.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
That's the life cycle, unfortunately, and that's I think and then I guess that leaves. And if there's anything about the ending that I think is maybe like the reason why it's all that stuff is in there. Like, why? Because for the most part, these characters just cross paths, like literally just walking by each other in transition, if they ever encounter each other at all. And then suddenly they're very deliberately put right in front of each other, and we get to see, like, what did the experience of the movie do to them at that moment? What were they both looking for? And yeah, so like, why did Bill choose to just be like, hey, like he could have just beaten that kid up and then thrown him out of his house. But instead he was just like, okay, I've been there. I've been breaking into 2 people's houses and stealing their food. I know what that's like. What do you need, dude? Like that kind of approach. So like there is some growth from this guy where it's like he has some humanity enough to not be a dirtbag to someone that he probably was at some point. What's up, sweetie?
Yeah, it's both actors were really, really great. And yeah, I mean,
We're almost done, and then we'll go.
This movie is just they make the most of all their characters. And I just wanted to also shout out the sort of my favorite side characters. The auntie. I really liked that woman who played Bill's auntie. And especially like towards the beginning, the first time you see her, she's like playing cards with her friends, and she has one of those like margaritas in a can that she's drinking. And then, she was really, really great. Very true to life, I thought. And then, also I'll give a shout out to, I thought the girl who played Bill's baby mama was really, really great too.
Echo.
Or at least one of his baby mamas. She was really, really good. She was very like,
it's for the baby.
As far as that sort of, archetype is, you know, the sort of, I don't know what you would call her, like the res girl that is like way too beautiful to be on the res. She sort of inhabited that sort of archetype, and it was very, very she was really good too. And you know, that's what this film is. It's a lot of like really memorable side characters. And yeah, what did we think of, you know, I want to talk about all of the like symbolism and all of the imagery in this movie. There's so many different things. I think you had alluded to like the spiders in our doc, and the buffalo, and what else was there? There was like the man at the beginning. There's this sort of the intro of the movie is sort of this completely separate thing of an old man like smudging himself and then like putting something on his head, whether the camera's almost too far to see what he's doing, but it's either a blindfold or a headdress. I couldn't really tell, but yeah, what did you make of all that type of stuff?
Like that guy, you know, what I'm going to assume is that that is someone who lives on the res, that has wholly embraced that culture and is still clinging to it, but can't share it with anybody else. You know, still practicing, but has no way to bridge the gap to this lost generation that's come after him, that has no context or interest in it. But then we see the smudging come back around, even though Bill has like said multiple times that like he has nothing to do with the culture. He doesn't even speak Lakota. He doesn't know it. But like he just randomly at the end of the movie just breaks that out and smudges himself. And I thought that was kind of interesting, but it's because he's seen it done, you know, even though he hasn't appreciated it, it's at least a part of his identity to a degree. And yeah, I guess that's one thing, but yeah, I don't know. I want the spiders just popped up over and over again. The buffalo as well, but the buffalo is a vision. The spiders are actually there. And it's just a reflection of like how decayed the people's homes are. They can't keep the pests out, you know, and they let the spiders be because they need the spiders to kill the other bugs. So that it is a leftover from what probably was a part of their culture to begin with. It's like their aunties and their uncles never killed the spiders in the houses, so they know not to either, even though they're big and scary looking. Like those were some gnarly bugs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's right. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. And the thing that I was sort of, as far as the buffalo is concerned, because we see the buffalo, I want to say 3 times throughout the movie, once or twice by Bill, and then once by Matho. And I wanted to say that the buffalo is almost like a stand-in for like the older generations, or like the ancestors, where, you know, they're trying to like bridge some sort of connection with the younger generation, or they're trying to you know, they're trying to do something to sort of, I don't know, because yeah, like you said, they're lost and they don't care about you know, they're becoming more distanced from their ancestors, whether it be by the passage of time or the passage of history, or just becoming more interested with the sort of culture of the wider world. But yeah, that's kind of how I saw it. Why? What did you think?
What you just said just like crystallized something for me. Our friend at the beginning of the movie, he's smudging himself, and he's going on like spirit quests to try and have encounters, to have spiritual encounters with as many of the lost of the res as he can. And
I can see that,
and that's what's going on. Because when is the buffalo seen? It's usually in the morning, is it not?
Bill sees it once when he's walking his dog, and then Matho sees it while he's leaving his house. Yeah. And then Bill sees it again. I mean, the buffalo is like literally the last frame of the movie, is the buffalo outside his window. And so, yeah, it is sort of in the morning, or, you know, in situations where nobody else is around but the main characters.
Yeah. Golly, I really didn't make it much of it when I was watching the movie, but now I'm really into it. It makes a lot of sense to me now. Mm-hmm. Let's see.
Yeah, for sure.
What else can we really talk about?
Well, I guess I wanted to talk about you know, how at points this film is very funny. Like it actually gets some, you know, really funny like comedic moments out of such a, you know, a dire movie normally. Cause like you get I really enjoyed the moment where Bill's friends are just standing there at the party and the one guy's just staring daggers at that like fat redheaded guy who's dressed up as like a Polynesian, you know, native. And, you know, that was really funny. And I really liked you know, all this, I mean, there's a lot of stuff having to do with the white couple that is sort of like funny and sort of like a cringe way where it's like
really absurd. Yeah,
like you got any Christmas plans, Bill, you know, or that type of thing. And like the giving away of the jewelry and stuff like that.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. What did you make of, I mean, I guess we haven't really touched on that aspect of the film, but what did you make of that couple and you know, just their involvement in the movie? And, you know, I guess you did already kind of mention how that man sort of represents the sort of the tiny tyrants of those areas of the country. But yeah, what did you make of the actual characters?
Because he's, you know, I'm assuming they're both cheating on each other. Like these people are not happy people. And for some reason they, you know, just bring these, they prey on these reservation people for their dirty work and, you know, and whatnot. And yeah, the part where she like threatens him to like report him threatens Bill with human trafficking, that came out of nowhere. Like that was just a menacing little moment where it's just like, holy shit.
Just because she was like she was a wasted white girl, so she like was letting her sort of like true feelings come out.
Yeah, but beyond that, yeah, they're just so slimy. That farmer is just gross from like the moment you see him. You just know that there's something more going on there, and that's where like this movie maybe loses its way. We've alluded to it, and I think we maybe as well should just talk about it because there are high points. There's some really great like Paul Thomas Anderson-esque, you know, like it's light, you know, where you're like, oh god, like you're on a detour and your movie's going somewhere you didn't expect it to. But then it settles into something that's a little like way too typical in this day and age, where they abandon all the wonderful ambiguity and the unsettled, you know, sort of nature of of what a good slice of life story does. It should leave you like wondering, okay, well, what next? You know, it's like you're not supposed to see what comes next. And instead they go full fucking Robin Hood. Like they reveal this guy to like be so irredeemable that he doesn't deserve any pity. And then the white turkey farmer. And then we get this like really hip, fun Ocean's 11 on the res come and get your love sequence. And it's just way too fucking happy. And it just really upsets the vibe to a degree that if I were the executive in this situation, I would have taken out my samurai sword and said, splash, this is gone. Give me the shot of Matho in the bed as Auntie's like getting ready in the morning. You know, leave us somewhere like that.
Yeah, that is
We're
enough.
We're almost done.
Yeah, I mean, it really wanted to like have the happy ending, but yeah, as you said, just showing, you know, Matho on, you know, the couch in the morning. I mean, I think that's happy enough because he ended up in a pretty good place.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just went overboard with like the sort of happy celebratory ending because it was really cheesy and it was very jarring. The tone didn't work with the rest of the movie, and I sort of can appreciate the symbolism behind it all, you know, as far as like Redbone is a all native band that sung Come and Get Your Love, and you know they're sort of turning these symbols of Thanksgiving on their heads, the turkeys themselves. And so yeah, I mean, I sort of can appreciate it in that way, but it was just very oddly done and just like strange. Very
a very strange choice considering how carefully the movie had been, you know, made up to that point, just in terms of like delicately laying out its story and following it. You know, like it just didn't really feel like a natural conclusion. He could have done anything. Like he could have genuinely just poisoned that dude's herd. You know, they could have just, you know, like killed all of his animals. It could have just been, it could have had a totally different vibe that would have been truer to the tone and the spirits of the story as it had been thus far. And then it just went full like liberal white woman schlock at the end. And it's unfortunate because the directors and the writers of this movie were killing it literally up until the last 3 minutes. So, you know, like, and maybe that's exactly what you want though. It's like, you kind of want to, you need to cut through that darkness so completely, but I think that's disingenuous. It's a little dishonest even, because those young men are probably all going to go to jail now or get killed, guaranteed. You know, like you know, by having them do that, it's like it doesn't, like what they have left them in is an awful situation, but you have happy music playing, so you're not supposed to think about it, and that's something I wish they hadn't done.
Yeah, same. Yeah, it is very strange. I don't think it's I don't think it's enough to, you know, spoil the movie or anything
Absolutely
like that.
not. Absolutely not.
But it's, yeah, it is just a very strange way to leave it. And I am glad that it wasn't like the very, very last thing that we're left with, because we do still, you know, after that sequence is done, we do still get the sequence of Bill like waking up in the morning and smudging himself and then looking out the window and seeing the buffalo. So it's not the very, very last thing we're left with.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it is very strange. And yeah, anything else you wanted to discuss about the movie in particular? I guess.
Yeah. Was there any, what is the magical realism? I guess like with Motho and his book of magic, like his like ceremonial magic that he's getting into. It's like he's longing for something. He's longing for what he, you know, like what he's not getting from, you know, his own tribal experience, I guess. Yeah, because
I would assume it's just to change his situation.
Yeah.
Like he thinks that, you know, he's still a little kid in you know, he's growing up fast, but he is still a little kid in some sense. So he still sort of believes in magic, and he's sort of like, you know, maybe I can, with this, I can change my situation, or I can, you know, reverse my fortunes. Basically, that's kind of what I took it as.
And it's not until he burns it up with the drugs that he, you know, has a chance of, you know, fixing anything, you know, and he's trying to steal some Vienna sausages. I appreciated that. Like, yeah, and that's another thing. Like the milk cartons looked like the milk cartons that are in my grocery stores. Like the Jones soda in the C store, just like that's a Midwest thing, and the bug juice that the kids are drinking, you know, like at different times, like. But like this movie is just so like perfectly awesome and authentic and wonderful that don't, like, all of our comments about the end of the movie don't matter, just because of how powerful and good the rest of it is. But this kind of leaves us with the question: should this duo stick together? Like, and should like what kind of movies do you think they could make after this? Because this is a pretty strong debut.
Yes, yeah, very much, yeah. Yeah, Riley Keough and what's her name, Gammell, Gina Gammell, I think. They have alluded to in interviews that they do want to make another movie together, and that they probably will for their next movie. But they also want to do stuff separately. Is kind of the vibe I got from the interviews I was reading with them, and I would wholeheartedly, you know, embrace another movie from these two. And I want to see, you know, what they can do. I don't know, maybe I guess with something they're maybe both more familiar with, because the vibe that I got from a lot of the interviews they gave, it was that they give a lot of credit to the writers, because the writers are there. There's one guy in there, what's his name, Franklin Subob or something like that.
Franklin Subob.
They give a lot of credit to that guy, and he is like he is the one like native guy on the writing team, and he's kind of, I'm sure, the guy from which a lot of
the authenticity
from. Yeah, the authenticity. And so yeah, I would totally want to see a movie from this duo again, and I would, you know, maybe they would do something more in line with their personal experiences. I want to see what Riley Keough has to say about growing up in the Presley family, you know, something like that.
Because everyone else is telling her story, you know, so, like, if you think about it, because like Sofia Coppola's next movie is about her parent, like her grandparents. Is that what it is? Because she's
Yes.
the
Or
she's
no.
no, is she the
Sofia Coppola's movie is about Elvis Presley's wife, Priscilla.
Priscilla. So that's her,
Priscilla Presley,
and that's Riley Keough's grandma.
Yes, yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to keep the family tree straight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because she's been around as an actress and a model for some time, and
Yeah.
the fact that she can make a movie like this is pretty incredible. More power to her, I say.
Yeah.
Moving on to the mentionable this week. You got some choice comics from our boy, is that Chip Zdarsky?
Yes, yeah. This is this is a pretty big deal. Chip Zdarsky released the final issue of his Daredevil run this week, and I've been with this thing since the beginning. We're now 4 years later. That's how long it's taken for this thing to finish, and I think it ended up being like 2 full series, a mini series, an event, and an annual. And
Wow.
so there's a lot to this. And yeah, this is going to go down as one of the most legendary Daredevil runs ever.
Oh, God.
And it's going to be up there with, Kevin Smith's, and it's going to be up there with Frank Miller's, I think. And I just really enjoy one of my like favorite feelings when you read comics is that feeling that, as you're reading something, that you're reading something that's going to be legendary, that's going to be a legendary run that is going to be remembered, decades from now. And that's what's going to happen here. That is definitely what's going to happen. And comics is such a gamble usually because a lot of times you're buying these things off the shelf without having looked inside of them, just going, based off the creative team, based off a one paragraph blurb as to what the plot is. It's kind of a gamble because you're spending, $4 to $5 on these issues, and then you open them up and they could be garbage. They could be complete shit. And so I just love that feeling of reading something that is going to stand the test of time. And so go out and pick this up. I'm sure it'll be collected in an omnibus sometime in the near future. And yeah, it was a great run.
That tingling in your fingers. I know exactly what you're talking about, where you're just like, oh God, oh shit, oh God. Like I remember when Bradshaw first read the last issue of Blackest Night at my apartment when that came out. Like he basically had that same spiel. He's just like, this is gonna be talked about forever.
Yeah.
And my vegetable this week is, I don't know, it's a little of the time because this is like a week old basically, but the whole Rich Bend north of Richmond Oliver Anthony phenomenon. Did you pick up on this at all, Matt?
A little bit, yeah. From what I understand, so he's this guy, this singer from Appalachia or something.
From
and
Farmville, Virginia. He's literally from Farmville, Virginia.
Is there people out there who think he's some sort of plant in the music industry or something like that? That's all I know.
They set out to try and prove that he was, because we had just seen the AstroTurf of Jason Aldean's bullshit in country music and the culture war slop. And then all of the wrong people kind of, held this up initially, in terms of grifters and, in those kinds of culture warrior types. But yeah, this was just a factory worker, a high school dropout, sort of a guy. He's got a farm that he's working on. He lives in a camper that he spent $750 on Craigslist to get. And he's just a very simple dude, and he's not very good at guitar from what he says. He's not even a good person from what he says. But this public broadcasting in West Virginia, I think it was, came to him and were like, hey, we want to just shoot some videos with you. It might be cool. We like the music you do. We think you're a neat guy, so we're just going to do this with you. And then it gets on YouTube and it gets into the reels and the TikToks and the fast delivery impulse, mechanism. And it really fucking took off, from 2 million views on YouTube on Saturday last week to more than 22 million. This is the man who's keeping the Eras tour and Taylor Swift off of the top of the Billboard spot. Like the Swifties are dying because of some ginger-haired, weirdo, singing about like all the things that people have no sympathy for these days, which is bitching about taxes and like wishing that people could, spend their welfare money on, better things than, what is it, fudge rounds or whatever the line is.
Yeah.
But what just in the spirit of Robbie Robertson and the band and like songs like The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down, what I wish more people got out of this, instead of feeling condescension towards the people identifying with this, because it is kind of universal. It's like you see, African Americans listening to this. I can imagine there's probably a lot of Native Americans who could listen to this song and relate to a lot of it, because it's like everyone's getting kind of kicked down, to a degree in society. Like, I'm on my soapbox again. When you think about the cost of living and yada yada and the yada yada, and when you just have an authentic voice singing exactly from their heart, and it's just so pure and simple, the music itself is recorded in an interesting way because you actually hear the sound of the nature of his property. So you're hearing like the bones of this dude's like soul and the home that he's building for himself. It's a very unique thing. And I know his music isn't for everybody, but he has a really good song other than, quite a few other good songs other than the one that everyone's talking about. Like, he just has a good way with words. Like, I ain't got $1, but I don't need a dime. Like things like that. Like little like aphorisms like that are just kind of humble and simple. And it's a unique situation. And it's a beautiful thing to see something go viral in a genuine way and have it blow up so much that everyone just assumes that it's contrived, and just some part of like, oh, this is just Nashville pulling the wool in front of her eyes. But I think this was just a simple song striking a chord in a very easy and direct way. Like, and yeah, he talks about, he makes allusions to QAnon conspiracies, like kind of being like, hey, I wish they cared more about minors instead of minors on an island somewhere. So like he is pointing the finger directly at like the powerful in our country. And of course those people don't like it. But like this is just a dude writing a song. He openly is saying, I don't want your $1 million contracts. Leave me the fuck alone. The internet is an evil thing, and here's a Bible scripture. So that's what this dude is about. But I was just caught up in it. It was just an amazing thing to get to see happen in real time. But next week we are going to wrap up our Tarsem retrospective. We're gonna see the movie. Like, I'll never forget this. We were sitting in the theater just to see something else, and this trailer came up, and you just leaned over to me and you were just like, Superman. And then Tarsem's name came on. Immortals, was introduced to us. This is a strange little movie, and it's like his first foray into like genuine studio hackery. But we'll let you know. Was it a good time? You'll have to watch it with us. So please tune in. Thank you for watching with us this week, and have a good one.
Yep. See ya.